It is Food Friday time. It is 5:45. We like to talk food and drink at this stage in the show. And I'm joined today by Ben Franks, who's co-founder of Novel Wines and also resident sommelier for Crumbs magazine. Welcome to the programme, Ben.
Thank you.
First time I think we've had you on this show, so very nice to see you. And definitely capturing the attention of, well, not just me, but also Jeff out there, who sadly had to go outside and do some work. Before we get on and talk about the things that work well together, so you organise events where people can come and find out about good pairings.
Yeah.
Why is it important in the first place? You know, surely you can just pick a wine that you like, eat the food that you like. What difference does it make? What are we striving for?
So, I mean, the best thing about food and wine matching is it will just make the wine much more exciting. So it will mellow the acidity, it will make the tannins creamier. And when you get the right food and wine match for you, because everything's quite subjective, it can be a heavenly experience. So it can be amazing.
And so is there only one way to be able to work all of this out, and that's by literally tasting and testing?
Yeah, I mean, in reality, the best way is to taste as much as you possibly can, both food and wine. But the cheats, if you like, are if you've got something high in acid in a wine, so a sparkling wine, look for salty food. So a nice English bubbly with fish and chips is actually a really good match, or sparkling wine with a fry-up or eggs benedict or something.
Is there anything that doesn't go together? You know, I know you've brought in cheese, so cheese generally, okay, but are there any foods that really don't match with wine that you wouldn't pair?
There's some difficult ones, like mushrooms, for example, are quite hard to match because they're quite earthy and have umami and flavours like that. And I wouldn't put ice cream with anything either. Just the temperature change is really hard to match.
Yeah, I always like to have finished wine before I get to pudding.
Yeah,
that's true, and I didn't even know why, but maybe that was it.
Yeah, I think you can have too much sweetness as well. Once you start putting dessert wine with desserts, you end up with a bit of a sugar overload, which if you're not a sweet tooth can be a bit too much.
Is that controversial to say that? Because I notice increasingly when I have the opportunity to eat out, you see on the menu, this dish will go well with this drink, and they're sort of quite specifically pointing you for whether it's your starter, the main or the pudding, and saying, drink this.
Well, I think it comes down to everyone's individual taste.
You're so diplomatic, yeah.
For me, too much sugar in dessert ruins a good meal. Whereas if I have a sweet wine, I have some nice blue cheese with it, and I think the acidity in both the cheese and the wine is lovely. We're going to try some of that today. So.
We will in just a moment. How did you kind of get into all of this? Where did you begin your foray into wines?
I'm still a wine baby. I've only been in the trade 3 years, but I started as a beer and cocktail journalist. Okay. I went down to Camel Valley to meet Sam Linde.
So this is in Devon?
Cornwall.
Cornwall.
Yeah, just outside
I've been
Bodmin.
there. Yes,
I've
just been thinking, there's a camel cycle track.
Yeah, there is.
I'm just trying to retrace my steps and work out where it is. Like Padstow way, isn't it?
Yeah, beautiful place. And they have a tasting balcony that looks over this valley of vines. And I was completely naive about wine, a bit worried because I thought it might be snobby. But Sam just sat there for about 2-3 hours, took me through his whole range of Camel Valley wines, showed me the whole winemaking process, and I left a very happy man. So
a changed man.
Exactly.
This is going to be my career from now on. And how did you get into the journalist side of it, writing about cocktails and so on?
I've always loved writing, and it just came down to I've always said if you want to write about anything, you have to be a great writer. I was only really a good writer, so I had to specialise. And I chose something I loved, which was food, beer, spirits, wines, just the whole almost pleasure activity of experimenting with taste, really.
Yes, you're making me want to suddenly develop this specialism, whereas I've been quite happy just enjoying it every now and then so far. All right, you have come in with a selection of things. We're going to hold on to them just for a moment and then give them our full attention and work out whether you really can pair blue cheese and blue nun, manchego and merlot, camembert and chardonnay, ricotta and riesling. I don't know, but Ben does, so we'll find out from him in a minute. Right, it is 6:07, and we're talking about food, cheese and wine pairing on the programme with Ben Franks, who's here. He's co-founder of Novel Wines and also a resident sommelier for Crumbs magazine, which you may well have seen in various different cafes and shops. And he's giving hopefully all of us, a little bit of an education about what things go well together. He's come with wine and cheese, and so we'll do a little demonstration because he puts on these nights. So this is the thing that he does actually, and he's got another one coming up on the 17th of December at Harrington's Hotel in Bath. So if this is your kind of thing, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you can go along, sample wine and taste and see what works well together. So you've told us about why stuff should be paired and the difference it can make to the produce when you do that.
Yeah.
You've set out your wine credentials, and I did just have a little sample because I was worried I wouldn't be able to talk at the same time if I was eating cheese. So, I was being well mannered. But so tell us what you've come in with, and then I can share what happened to me. So you've got 3 different kinds of cheeses.
Yep. So the cheese is from my favourite cheesemonger. It's from Nibbles. It's 40 years old, and it's Bath's oldest and best cheesemonger. I think he hasn't let me down in the 3 years I've been running wine and cheese tastings.
And when you go in there, do you say, right, just give me your best, whatever it might be, and then you eat the cheese and go away and find the wine?
I've picked the wine, so I always pick the wine first,
Yeah.
and then I go in and see Stefan, and he basically, I let him lead. So I say, this is what the wine tastes like, and this is all the elements in the wine. What cheese do you recommend? And he's a brilliant French guy, who always picks the right stuff.
And do you have a kind of bartering system between you? He gives you cheese, you give him wine.
At Christmas, yeah, we do a little gift trade at Christmas, definitely.
Okay, I like the sound of that. So we've done a little sampling. So you came in with a goat's cheese, which is very nice creamy aged goat's cheese.
Creamy, and it's quite unusual because it's 22 months old. So I've paired that with a really creamy, oaky dry Tokaj from Hungary, made by Gabor Kardos.
What's a Tokaj? Just explain a bit about that kind of wine.
Yeah, sure. So it's at the top of Hungary. You've got all these volcanic soils, which means that you preserve some of the acidity in the grape. So you get a really fresh style of white wine when it's dry, and a really fresh sweet wine as well. We're going to try a sweet wine at the end, but the dry styles are sort of like a Chardonnay. They're very red apple flavours. And then they're usually oaked as well, so that adds a bit of creaminess and a bit of spice. So you need something a bit strong to stand up to it.
Yeah.
But you also need something to cut through some of the acidity as well. So the creaminess of the goat's cheese does the acidity, and then the full flavour matches quite nicely with the oak, I think.
So I've just eaten that gave me the chance to eat the cheese. He's good at this, isn't he? This is what he does. Talks while people eat cheese. And do you know what strikes me? I ate the cheese first, had the sort of strength of that strong flavour, quite salty, creamy, very nice. And then you drink the wine and suddenly, I was trying to describe this to you, there's another flavour that sort of kicks in, and I've not experienced that because I've never been to a wine tasting, so what do I know? But proof that it brings something different to it when you add the two components together.
It brings out more in the cheese, and it also softens the wine. So together they both change, and you get a much more interesting experience.
Yeah. You've got a cheese that's probably a bit more familiar to most households. I dare to venture they'll have some variety of this or other inside the fridge. So tell us about the second one you've come with.
Yeah, so to go with the red, which is a Cabernet Sauvignon from Lebanon, Chateau Cassara, a lovely old winery in the Becker Valley. We've picked Glastonbury cheese, so just outside Glastonbury, Farmer Gold's cheddar, so a nice pongy, salty style of cheese.
So if you had a good mature cheddar at home, would you just recommend in general that Cabernet Sauvignon would go with it?
I'd recommend any sort of full red with a bit of tannin to it. So whether you prefer your Shiraz or your Cabernet Sauvignon or a nice deep plummy Merlot, they all tend to do really well with a nice cheddar cheese.
Let's see what happens. So I've eaten the cheese. Let's now have a very small sip of the wine. And it is like having a little cheese hit. It is. I've not experienced it, like I say, so it's really noticeable. Definitely brings out the strength of the cheese flavour in that.
Yeah.
Very nicely. And differently to if you just ate it by itself.
And it makes the wine fruitier as well. So you have a fruitier wine and a...
That's true. You keep reminding me about the wine. I'm all about the cheese, I think. Okay, and last but by no means least, very Christmassy. I mean, probably most people will end up with a gift of this at Christmas time. Some blue cheese.
Yeah, so the blue cheese we've had a bit of fun with. So I've paired it with a dessert wine from Thailand. So at Novel Wines, we only do weird and wonderful wine. So this is 100% Chenin Blanc, rich apple sweetness. And because the acidity is quite high in the dessert wine, we've gone with a high acid cheese, which is a blue. And the best way with a dessert wine, I know you just had a bit, is to do the wine and the cheese and the wine.
Good.
And they match really beautifully, I think.
Well, do you know why I did it that way round? It's because in my heart of hearts, I am not a fan of blue cheese. I wouldn't ordinarily have blue cheese on a cracker. If it was disguised in soup, I would try that, or maybe wrapped in pastry. And I wanted to see what happened when I had the wine. So I have done that, and let's just have a little tiny sip. And you've picked something that does have a very lovely flavour. That, to me, the wine comes through the most in that. That's really very nice. So in terms of just generally speaking now, I know you specialise in more of the sort of more niche varieties that you might find, but in terms of matching a bottle of wine with some blue cheese, what's just straightforward suggestions might we find?
The best thing to do is look for anything with acidity and sweetness. So a sauterne or a general dessert wine always goes really well with blue cheese. A lot of people drink port with blue cheese. For me, it doesn't work so much because the tannin and the blue don't jar as well. The best thing for port for me is a piece of dark chocolate. So that's where I'd go when you get the port wine.
We're venturing into different territory now. Chocolate with wine and port. Well, look, Ben, thank you. That has been really interesting. Like I say, first time I've ever tried the pairing in that sort of a way. So it's been an education for me, and hopefully you've also picked up some tips on what might go well with some of the cheeses that you would have in your fridge at home. You can see Ben, you can read his work in Crumbs magazine. He's their sommelier, and you can also go along to one of his events. The next one, as I say, is in Bath at Harrington's Hotel on the 17th of December. For now, Ben Franks, thank you very much for coming on and joining us on the programme. That's it from me.